Oh hey folks, so this week's video is for all my fellow Quebec homeschoolers. It's about the learning project, which is kind of the first document of the year, first set of paperwork that we have to turn in. So yep, let's just dive right in and get to it. So these are actually the last pages of the official learning project template that you can get from the Ministry of Education here in Quebec. But they define the learning project as the child's learning project is a document that describes the learning to be acquired and the competencies, there we go, fun word, of the Quebec education program to be developed. So this is literally just papers that are used for you to describe what you're going to be doing for your school year, basically, and how it's going to meet the requirements that the Education Ministry of Quebec puts out for, what they expect of things like public schools and whatnot. So, just to take a look at it. And another thing to note, I'm fairly sure that while this is the template that they provide, you can go onto their website and download it. You can even fill it out on the computer and just turn it in as a PDF. You can make your own. You can find templates from different organizations or make your own or whatever. I use the one that they provide because I'm lazy. And they did all the work for me, so I just have to fill in boxes. So, anyway, the first couple pages are pretty straightforward. So, I don't know if I can hold this up. So, it's stuff like name, date of birth, the school board that you would, or service center, I think is what some of them are called, that your child would be registered in if they were going to school, what grade they're in, and there's even optional parts where if you want to discuss and type out like what learning style your child has, their strengths, their weaknesses, and whatnot. So it's pretty self-explanatory, typical paperwork kind of things. Then you have a page of when you intend to start, and this document as a whole is due September 30th. If you're going, with the flow of a regular homeschooling year here, or I believe it's within 30 days should you choose to withdraw your child from public school. You have about a month. So, and it being September, this is the big to-do of this month in homeschooling here in Quebec. So, but yes, you put when you're starting, your educational approach, approximate time, just things like this. Again, the first couple pages pretty self-explanatory. There's a page for things like if you're going to be using extra organizations, like enrolling your child in, let's say, some type of class or anything like that, you can mark it here. And also if you're using resources from a school board, because we do here in Quebec have that right to request things like textbooks and whatnot. But the big beefy part of the learning project is the part that actually breaks down each subject, and you go into more detail of what you're going to do. And this it'll become a bit more clear of why I use their template as opposed to like making my own. And it's because here on this column they basically lay out everything that the Ministry of Education would like to see happening as far as they call them competencies. Yes. So when filling this out, I personally find that the easiest way for me to approach this, because here is like a to-do list, right, that, and you'll look, like if we just look here for English, elementary, And then this is each of the goals that would be expected within elementary. And then, you know, if we're going into higher level things. But to go straight here to the next column, which is each subject will ask for a brief description of the activities chosen. And I find it is so much easier because the last column is for you to list your resources. And I find it so much easier if you fill this out first. And the reason is because then you can kind of look at this like, here's what I have, which in my case, because we do a bit of interest, like for my daughter, it's a lot of interest-led learning. Whatever she likes to do or she wants to learn about is what we're going to cover. So I gather resources based on that. And then I look and I say, okay, how can I accomplish this with this? And that's the answer in this middle column. As opposed to trying to think, okay, so I have to teach to read and listen to literary, popular, and information-based text. What is the activity I'm going to do in order to teach this? And then go find the thing to do that. And that might work for some people. That's definitely a way to approach this. But for me, it's almost like a Venn diagram. Over here is what the Ministry of Education wants. This is what my child wants. And then here is the middle ground where everything can kind of find some common ground. And so here I have our learning project actually from last year. This is from grade 2. And just to give some examples, so here you can see on this side again, the format has changed a little bit. That's, you know, it happens sometimes, but the basic principle of it all is the same. And so we have the same kind of list of competencies here on the left. Over here, I wrote down the resources that we were using. And here in the middle is how I answer how I'm going to accomplish this using this. So here, this first one is daily general read aloud time from both parent and Adara, which is my daughter. It can include both fiction and nonfiction material, and also any material that Adara herself has created. Also includes unit study materials. And that definitely checks off something like to read and listen to literary, popular, and information-based text. So you just kind of go through, and once you have your resources written, because it will be easier, and for me anyway, it's way easier to just look at what I have and almost problem solve. Like, okay, so this is, I have to use language to communicate and learn. That has to be something that we cover. How can I use this? And then the answer I just put here. And I don't get too caught up on making complete sentences or anything. I just try to make it very clear and separate it, like visits to local library for books. Like, that's not a sentence. You know, some of these probably don't even have punctuation or anything at the end. So, but yeah. So it's just an easier way, in my opinion, to go through, because, you know, we have some mandatory subjects like English, and then you have French as a second language in our case, and then mathematics, science, and technology, social sciences, and then from here we have the, it's optional in a homeschooling context. So we'll have topics like physical education and health, or ethics and religion, arts education, things of that nature. And some of these I don't tend to fill out because either we just don't do enough, in my opinion, to really warrant what's going on. The big one that we do fill out, tend to, are the arts education, because my daughter is very interested in the arts. And again, it's just looking at this, and because it's optional, I find, or have found, that the review of the optional subjects is a lot more lax than I would say, like, let's say what we're writing down for math or for science or anything like that. But it's still the same principle. You look over here if you're doing visual art to produce individual works in the visual arts. Well, what are your resources to do that? And then how are you going to accomplish that? So that covers those. Other subjects and competencies, again, these are optional for the most part. If you're not doing anything extra, like this one here, I believe says compulsory, but again, it's just anything that's not already listed. If you're not doing anything extra, you just click none. And yeah. And then additional notes, which is another optional section. I do like to put in this section things like if we are doing maybe exactly what unit studies we're doing, because I may not go into detail in all the other pages. But there I can list out if we're doing very specific ones that maybe just didn't get mentioned in all the other list. So yeah, like I said, it's really not too bad. Again, here's some examples of, let's say, French as a second language. So, you know, we gathered resources for learning French, and then in order to answer, you know, to act on understanding of text, to communicate, you know, all these different things, and just answering that, how these resources will be used. And you can just go subject by subject like this. And I also don't worry too much about marking the level of instruction. It's mostly just, this particular part I find is mostly just to kind of keep track of when your child will have to do the exams, which vary based on, I think, what language you're doing instruction in. So because we do things in English, it's grade 6, I think. So when she's approaching the grade 6 mark is when we would have to start thinking about that. So, but yeah, it's really not too bad. It does take a minute to sit down and type it up. And, you know, my boxes here are quite full. But the reality is if you are able to figure out how to answer each of these with this and less, more power to you. Like, I think it all works out pretty well. So, and again, like, you can make up your own too. I just like using this one because it's I don't have to look up somewhere else, like, what competencies am I going to have to make sure that I'm fitting and answering with, and are my resources going to work? Because sometimes it will happen, like, you know, in particular with math here. If we go to the math section, a very common is to solve situational problems related to mathematics. And I'm not someone who's great at coming up with math problems or anything like that. So I just automatically know that if I can't find them on my own or make them or find them within what we're using, well, I need to contact someone and make sure that one of the listed activities will be sitting down and solving that. So you just fill in, it'll show you where the gaps are too, by sitting down and really looking at this, because eventually you'll hit something like, oh, what we've picked out doesn't cover that, so I better find something that does. And then you just add it in. So I think I will try my best to scan this. If it might help to share as an example on the blog. And yeah, I hope that sharing some of this insight was a little bit helpful. If you have any questions about learning projects here in Quebec, I'd be happy to do my best to answer them. I'm not any kind of, you know, legal expert or even someone from the ministry, but I am someone who's been homeschooling for a couple years now under these regulations and whatnot. And you know, like I said, like, this was an approved learning project, and so yeah, I'm happy to share and help where I can. So thanks so much for watching. I hope this was helpful, and I will see you next week. Bye.